in myself that stands in the way of a good testimony. I pray that I speak truth, and I pray that I don't say anything that doesn't come from you, Father, and doesn't glorify you and your Son. And I do pray for those people today that shared on the chat that's hurting and have suffered so much loss lately with family members. And Father, I just pray that you please just send your shalom on them. And if there's a possibility for healing, Father, I pray you heal them, and I pray that you get all of the glory for it. I love you, Father, and I just pray that you're here with us tonight. And I ask and pray this in the name of Yahshua, who is the Messiah. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I'm so glad to get to be here with you. I know you were on a couple interviews that I was in, and we got to interact online a number of times. And I've enjoyed your contributions in the chat and the things that you've pointed out, and I really enjoy your feedback. And so, when the idea came up to do this interview, I was really excited about the opportunity to do this with you. So I appreciate it.
I'm the same, brother. I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, I'll tell my tale, but yeah, I never really left. I mean, circumstances kind of kept me out of much of anything this summer, but I always had time. Always watching the YouTube videos. I was tried to pop in on the Shabbat when I could, which wasn't very often, but I was always able to watch them afterwards. So, and I kept up on like prayer requests and people that I saw that were hurting on Facebook, and just tried to stay active, just praying when I could. It's just one of those things, one of the things that I got settled on myself over the summer was, the Torah is not a burden. It's not heavy. It's not a checklist of things I need to do. What it is, it's a way for me to, it kind of goes beyond live my life. It's almost like I want to breathe Torah. I just really want to take on what I can. I don't want to take on more than I can. I'm finding, I'm sure we all are, as we walk, we can take on more and more, but I don't want to just be a checklist kind of dude, man. I want to serve the Father wherever he may take me, and from just a simple, deep, just a communion with the Father, and to me, it's, because I was getting so caught up in all that, because with the Yahad, man, dude, you get on one of those playlists and start watching and start going down rabbit trails and take notes, and all of a sudden, man, right, it's 3 days later, and I'm like, it's time well spent, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's just almost information overload, so I was very unsettled regarding Paul. There were some things I just could not come to grasp with, and reading through the Nazarene Acts and studying through the Apostolic Constitutions, the Didache Barnabas, just the ones that we all read, but I actually took time to kind of go through them slowly, a little more slowly and prayerfully, and Clement, man, boy, he really speaks to my heart, man, just because I don't know, for some reason, I can really relate. How you just get a story and you can really relate to somebody, So to me, man, the Nazarene Acts, the Epistle of Barnabas, and the Didache, man, those three writings that I had no idea even existed until I found, I think, one of Jackson's videos one day. It's opened up an entirely new world to me the past few years. Things are different, and so yeah, it's been a pretty interesting trip this summer. If you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of share a little bit of my testimony, kind of like going on and where it came from.
I really definitely want you to open up with that. That's great.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm actually an Air Force brat. My dad was 20-year Air Force guy. He was in Vietnam. He was doing like counterintelligence stuff in Laos for a few years and got out, and then he reclassed into air traffic controller. And he did that for his last like 17, however many years he had left after that, retire. But as far as like spirituality and the father, my mother was a old time Baptist, one of the ones that, you break the creek in the winter and baptize in no cold water, and all that. And she had an old King James Bible that I have to this day. I still have it. And I can remember going through my childhood, because every 3 years we'd move. I was very blessed. I got to live over in Germany and see most of Europe as I think like 11, 12, 13-year-old. So I can remember most of it, but yeah, she drug us in and out of these little Baptist churches for as long as I could remember, and I can't remember not one sermon. I don't even think I can recall a pastor or anybody. It was just one of those things. You're a kid, you just go and you just try not to make too much noise,
Yeah, I can
My
relate.
dad was the same. Yeah, my dad was the same, man. He was a drinker, not real bad, but he wasn't like a violent man or anything. But there just wasn't much of the father in our lives. But so anyway, I got caught up when I was a teenager. I got caught up into the occult, Satanism, Wicca. I dabbled in Wicca. I was just searching I knew there was something beyond me and beyond what we have here. I just kind of was looking for what it was, and wasn't really interested in my mom's, going to church and whatnot. So I just kind of dabbled with all that nonsense. Pretty much kept myself out of trouble. Didn't really do too much, but so then I joined the Army. I got out of the high school in 1985. And my dad kind of let me spin my tires for about a year and kind of saw I was going nowhere. So he gave me the classic choice on my birthday on May 2nd. In 1986, he said, "All right, 4 choices, man: Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Pick one." So I picked the Army, and I signed up on May 3rd, and I shipped on May 13th and went to basic training in Fort Benning.
Whoa, that was a rush.
Home of the infantry. Oh yeah, it was a whole different world because yeah. So went through basic, got out, went home, I was 19, wild man. I was an infantry, had a basic train, just drinking. Well, unfortunately, I hadn't really realized this, but alcoholism ran severe on both sides of my family, both my mom and my dad's side. Both my grandfathers died from cirrhosis. Their fathers died from it. So, I was a young man. I was in the Army. I got stationed at Fort Drum up here in New York. And we all came as a cohort unit. There was 130 of us. We were all 18, 19-year-old kids. They put us on a base with a local town within driving distance and cut us loose. So it was debauchery, man. I served for 8 years. The first 4, I don't even really remember. I mean, I got married at the time. My ex-wife now and I we were 2 confused, alcoholic messes, really. It was just a mess. But so anyway, my first 4 years in the service was during peacetime. I did a lot of deployments and training, but they were all just peaceful kind of things. Wasn't no big. And I re-enlisted for Fort Drum President Duty assignment, and I was in the infantry in the 10th Mountain Division. And right after my re-enlistment, we ended up going to not my whole division, but a few of us got detached out to the 101st Airborne. We went as the 18th Airborne Corps. We went to over to Desert Storm and got attached over there and ran some security patrols. And I'm not one of those guys that I don't really like to talk too much about that kind of thing. It's just that it's not that I have any super horrible war stories per se about it, but it's part of my life I'm not particularly proud of. knowing what I know now, and there's things I have guilt about and things like that. So I don't really like to dwell about it, but I did go to 2 conflicts. I went to Desert Storm, and then we came back, and I went to the Sinai for 6 months. It's part of the Multinational Force and Observers. What it was to quote unquote keep the peace between Israel and Egypt, to enforce the peacekeeping treaty they had. So and that wasn't really, there wasn't too much over there. I got to go see St. Catherine's Monastery and climb, Mount Sinai, which I don't think is Mount Sinai, but
Right.
whatever. It's cool. Got some cool pictures. But came back from that and deployed to Somalia. And Somalia was probably the worst time of my life, I would say, was Somalia. But got through it. The Father was gracious, and He watched out for me and for my troops, and I came back. So my ETS date was actually in country while I was in Somalia, and my first sergeant I was an E5 promotable. I would have pinned my E6 on that. I re-enlisted, but I kind of saw the way that it was going, because my first 4 years was during peacetime. It was just kind of like a little bit of training, a whole lot of partying. But my last 4 years was real world, and I kind of saw, we're not leaving the sandbox. We're going to be over there. And, I had some young kids at the time. And so I got out. And so my ex-wife, and I have 3 older kids. I have a son who's 32 now, and 2 daughters. One of them just pinned on her corporal stripe. She's in the Army. She just pinned on her corporal stripes today, actually. So
Nice.
And then my older daughter is she has 2 kids, and she's with a guy up here in Watertown. But so we moved out to Seattle after I got out. My dad and my mom lived out in Seattle. My mom had really bad diabetes then. Her brother had died from it, or complications from it, and I think he was in his late 30s. And my mom was significantly sick with it. I mean, she was on home dialysis, and she had a pump and for years, and she ended up losing, like, she had part of her toe cut off just from, diabetes is rough on your extremities.
That is rough on it.
But I was blessed. I got to go out. I'm sorry, brother. I mean, cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I worked with diabetic patients in the past, so I know what you're talking about. It can be tough.
But it was in a way, it was a time of blessing, because I got to see her, and she got to meet her grandchildren, and so we ended up staying out there for about 3 years. Wasn't making it. I was still an absolute mess. I was still drinking, heavily alcoholic. Just, life was not good. So we ended up leaving there in, I believe, November of '96. We drove back to New York State and up to Watertown. My ex-wife's family's from Watertown, and I got a job at a working with people with disabilities in an agency up there. My ex-wife and I at the time, we had it was your classic bad situation, abuse. And we never hit each other, but it was just, I was a mess. I was an alcoholic. I was mean. I was inattentive. She was just fed up with everything. She several times, but she never got, just the whole typical thing.
Yeah.
So during all that, my mother had passed away, and so my dad had called me, and I couldn't get out there for my mom's funeral. I didn't have any money. I was making, I think, $6.25 an hour where I was working or something, and we weren't a wealthy family. We didn't have any money, so I couldn't get out there. So I had a lot of guilt from that. My ex-wife, this was pretty much the beginning of the end for our marriage. We were already kind of just looking for an excuse, I think. God was nowhere near our relationship, either one of us. So, so her family wouldn't help, get me out there. So it was just a bad situation. We ended up splitting up. So after that, just time passed, a couple of years passed. Then my dad gave me a call out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm going to be getting remarried. So I wanted you to fly out and be my best man." So I've never met her before. So I'm like, all right. So I made arrangements and flew out there. And my dad had gotten saved, quote unquote saved, right? And I'm like, well, So in the meantime, I don't think I shared this, but when I went to Desert Storm, right before I went, one of my good friends that I went over with was a Roman Catholic, devout, super devout Roman Catholic. And he had been talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So I went through RCIA, through the Roman Catholicism, and I got anointed, and then, sprinkled and baptized and took my first communion, all that before I went to Desert Storm. So at that time, I started getting more into my religion, so to speak, after my split with my ex-wife and things. And so I flew out to, I think it was in 98, or 90, maybe early 99. I flew out to Seattle to meet with my dad. And it was funny. I remember when I was going to fly out there, I had this plan, because he and I had spoken a lot, that I was going to convert him to Catholicism. I had my rosary, man. I had my I can't remember what version of the scripture I had, but I had whatever it was, and then my scapulars on, and all. I went packing, man. So we get there, and we had a wonderful time, and he got married. She's a wonderful lady still. Her and I are very close now, but so my dad shared his tale, so to speak, and what had happened is that when my mom passed away, my dad was just completely lost, because I remember my mom telling me, she goes, "Listen, honey, when I die, your dad can't be alone. He's don't let him just, waste away to nothing in the house, because he will." So it was funny, but so I went out there, and my dad said, "Listen," he goes, "I was so heartbroken about losing your mom." He goes, "I didn't know what to do." And he goes, "But the only thing I did know is that she loved Jesus." He said, "I know that she loves that she's always loved Jesus." He goes, "So I said, okay, if she loves Jesus," he goes, "I knew enough that wherever she was, probably in heaven, or wherever Jesus was, that's where she was." He says, "And I missed her so bad that my heart was breaking, and I need to get to her, so to speak." So
Wow.
and I'll just say right off the bat, I'm a very emotional guy. I mean, I've done some pretty rough at times. I'm part of a motorcycle club.
Nice.
I'm just rough and tough, like thing. I'm not at all that way anymore, dude. I've fought my last fight. I'm just kind of a emotional dude. So a lot of times, especially when I speak about things with the father, I get emotional and I choke up. So if I do that,
No
I
worries.
apologize. But
That's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
so my dad, he picks up a phone book and he looks up churches. And the first church he comes to was something Baptist church. I forget what the name of it was. He knows, but so he calls it. And Pastor, I think his name was Pastor Harris. He still talks about him, picks up the phone, and and Dad says, "My name is Mike McKinley," and blubbers out his story to him. And so Pastor Harris says, "Come on down, or I'll come to you." Or so they ended up meeting up, and Pastor Harris is a wonderful man, shares the God, goes down the Romans road or whichever one he did and shared the gospel. My dad just repented, and to this day he's a man of God. It was that
Wow.
moment. So I had know that though for a couple of years. So I go there, I was gonna go when I was going to convert him.
Uh-oh.
We're talking, and my dad, he didn't know a whole lot, man. He still doesn't know. He because I try to talk to him about stuff, and he's like, "Listen, man," he's telling me that. He goes, "Shawn, I love you and I know what you're saying." And he goes, "And you know what? A lot of what you're saying, I'm sure is true, and it makes sense to me." He goes, "When I'm 74 years old," he goes, "I love Jesus. I know he died for my sins, and I know that he saved me." He goes, I'm fine with that. And of course I'm thinking fire assurance, fire assurance,
All right.
But you know what, man? He's an honest man. He's not the same man I remember when I was a kid. He has a wonderful wife. He walks, whether he acknowledges it or even realizes it, but he walks out the Torah in a lot of really good ways. So I mean,
Hallelujah.
yeah, absolutely, he is a tremendous blessing. I didn't used to always think like that when I went through my Hebrew roots messianic phase. I was kind of militant about stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
That
learned to
was a
be a
phase
bit
I had
more.
to work through.
Yeah, yeah, that's rough. Some of them guys are real rough, man. But, so anyway, me and my dad but last night there, me and my dad are talking, and he says, listen, man, he hands me do you remember the chick tracks? They were like
Yes.
the little
Yeah, I've
comic
seen
books.
those. Yep.
Yep. He hands me three. He gives me, one's called Why Is Mary Crying? One is called like Lies of the Catholic Church or something. And the other one was whatever else the other was. I can't remember what now. He gives it to me. He goes, listen, he goes, take these on the plane. He goes, don't read them until you get on the plane. And I said, okay. And he goes, I love you and all that. And off I go. And so I get on the plane. I read the chick tracks. And I guess I'm one of those guys. I got saved by a chick track, I guess you could say, because
Wow.
it clicked. It's like all of a sudden you know, I just saw the fact that I was just a wretched person and I needed help, and I wasn't finding it through Hail Marys, and there wasn't anything.
Right.
I'm not digging the Catholic Church. There's a lot of good things I like very much about the Catholic Church, but you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and I didn't have that. What I had on that airplane was I found Jesus, so to speak. I had a really significant moment with the Father, and it was very powerful, and it touched me. So I got back off the plane. And I couldn't wait because I wanted to call my dad, so I did. And we're talking, we're crying, we're rejoicing. You got to find the Baptist church. You got to find the independent Baptist church, King James only, only the King James. And so it began. So I get back and look up the local independent Baptist church and went and met the pastor and asked him a bunch of pre-made questions that my dad had given me to this pastor, given him to give to me.
Yeah, I also went to a fundamental independent King James only Baptist church that would pride themselves on being narrow-minded and
Yes, close to me, like in the independent church 10 miles up the road. Wonderful people, but they won't fellowship because this one's closed communion, this one's closed communion. I was just like, wow, man. But hey, I was all on board, man. I got Pastor Ball was his name, Donald Ball. He was my because I've been baptized a few times, but I would say that was my first baptism when I was a saved man. I was baptized. I was baptized, of course, in the name of Jesus Christ, but I would in that was a legit immersion in my eyes. He was a man of God, and he remained so until the day he died, I believe, and I learned so much from that man. But anyway, so
oh
I
yeah.
found the church. Uh, I was just on fire. I soon got put in charge of the door knocking ministry. So we had a big giant map in the office of Watertown, New York, and showed all the streets. And I recruited church members and divided them up into assault teams, man. And we mapped it out. I said, okay, you're going here, here. And then we hit the street, dude. I think I knocked every door in this.
Wow,
Me and my crew,
impressive.
yeah. Oh, it was awesome, dude. It was a great time, and we had a wonderful time. I don't regret any of it. We shared the gospel with many people. Of course, we got doors slammed in our face and cursed at and stuff thrown at us, but it was all a wonderful
Yeah,
experience. It
I got
really
to do
was.
something similar, so I can relate. Like
Yeah.
they even would have make arrangements for the teenagers because I was a teenager when I went to a fundamental Baptist church,
Yeah.
and it was cool. And they made it fun, and yeah, you end up learning how to deal with rejection, but those are skills you end up taking in life, but you get to plant the seeds. And it was definitely a stepping stone, like me and like you, like a stepping stone in our life, big one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, my best friend that I made at the church, at the time he was like 62. His name was Brother Bill Countryman, and man, he was a good dude. I miss him, but he was Pastor Ball when he first started the church. He was out knocking doors in the neighborhood, and Bill was out back splitting wood, and he was like, I can't remember what denomination or some other thing he was, and he ended up getting in Pastor Ball's face and ended up, coming to church. And then he was like the main dude of the church. He was just a wonderful guy, but he was very instrumental in my as a young Christian for me, because I learned a lot from him as far as patience and being able to deal when people are being rude. And because I'm still at this point, I'm still kind of combat vet oriented frame of mind. I wasn't really into taking people's nonsense, and
Right.
you disrespect me, you might have issues, but I was young and just dumb, didn't know any better, but so I did learn a lot there. But I joined I really started to feel the call to preach. I really did. Pastor Ball kind of helped me through that. I started attending Slidell Baptist Seminary through a distance learning program, and preached a couple sermons. My first sermon, my brother still, it's funny because my brother lives in Washington. He's our professors here. He's like a linguist guy. He's in his third year of biblical Hebrew, and he's always, you need to take Hebrew. I said, brother, I need to take. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I said, listen, Eric, no, I don't. And I said, if I have a deep Hebrew question that any of the hundreds of dictionaries online can't tell me, and I said, dude, I got like 3 experts in Hebrew in the Yahad. And I said, I got you, man. I just call you up.
Ah, we got
I said, if
resources.
anything, I'll learn biblical Greek, man, because that's what all of our first, a lot of our writings are in Greek. But anyway, so that's an ongoing joke with him and I. But yeah, so I started going through that, and a good friend of mine named Mark Roper, he was the actual associate pastor of the church I was at. He he we started trying to plant another church in the town, in the city. And so Pastor Ball kind of didn't agree with Mark. They had went back and forth because it kind of boiled down to, I think, more of this town isn't big enough for the both of us kind of a thing, you know what I mean? So they ended up splitting. Mark ended up going to start his own church. I stayed up at Watertown Baptist for a while. I started asking some questions, so I started seeing stuff in scripture um, that wasn't jiving with my Baptist doctrine. Things about, like Yeshua would say, I'm not stepping on, lost sheep of the house of Israel. I was like, wait a minute, and I'm starting to read through Acts and James, and I'm starting to see, man, these people are keeping Torah, man. They're keeping like the law of Moses. I thought this was nailed to the cross. So I asked Pastor Ball, and his best answer to me was, well, if it's we have to keep the Old Testament if it's repeated in the New Testament. If it's not repeated in the New Testament, then we don't have to keep it anymore. And I said, so we should be out sacrificing things. Well, the book of Acts, they're going to, you're bringing, and no, we don't do that anymore. That's been done away with. I'm like, okay, I get that. So then when I started
Right.
questioning that, that's kind of where there just wasn't any truth there, and I guess, at the risk of sounding prideful, I've gotten to a place where I didn't feel I could learn any more from scriptures, interpreting it with through the eyes of being a Baptist. I needed to step away from that, and I needed to kind of look for something else.
Right.
So I started scouring the internet, I think, and I ran into some information on dispensationalism. So, because one of the things I had noticed as I was reading through the New Testament is there was differences in what Yeshua was saying and what the Acts was saying, and then what Paul was saying. Paul was being kind of wishy-washy. Like here he says the law is good, and here it says it's if you follow the law, he wishes you could just, if you get circumcised, he wishes you just cut it all off. I'm just like, what's going on here? So I got introduced to dispensationalism, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. That's why I see these weird differences in Paul and say, like, the teaching of the disciples, or like the gospels. I see these differences. And so then I got into hyper dispensationalism, which is,
how would you define dispensationalism?
well,
What?
the way it was described to me is that Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. So that I was in hyper dispensation. So my whole thing was only the letters Paul wrote after Acts 28. So in their mind was Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. They took 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. Those were the 7 letters of Paul that are applicable to the church today. The other ones, like 1st Corinthians, all of his other epistles were written during the period of the Acts timeline, so to speak. They figured that was just to Israel. We don't have to do, the Torah doesn't apply to us.
Okay.
The kingdom doesn't apply to us. None of the Jewish stuff applies to us. We are the church, which is his body, which is separate from Israel. Our blessings are in the far above heavens. Theirs are on the earth. So and they're never to meet. We would forever be separate. Our blessings are in the heavens, ministering to the heavenly beings. Their ministry is on earth, ministering to the humans, I guess. So, and then they got really big into the Greek, like the difference between Iranios and Epi-Iranios, how it's used in Hebrews for the heavenly Jerusalem, and how it's only used, of the skies. And it was just a big bunch of nonsense, really. But for a long time, it kind of answered some questions I was having about Paul and why we're seeing differences. Like, okay, well, maybe that's, but then I started coming. Do you remember in the, maybe some of the guys here, I don't know how long you've been into like Hebrew roots, but do you remember there was like in like 2009 or 8 or 7, or maybe it was 10, there was like this awakening of Hebrew roots. Like that's kind of when I first started reading about it, about, oh yeah, the Hebrew roots to your faith. And they started using the name Yeshua, and, and that kind of thing. So I was like, back to your Hebrew stuff. So I started seeing things like, one of the questions I had to the guy that was running it, I said, listen, if Hebrews, it was written during the Acts, he's like, yeah, Hebrews was definitely Acts period. It's to the Israel, it's not to the church today. I'm like, well, then how is it that they use that same word where it says that our citizenship is in the heavens? That heavens is epiranios, the same one that he uses for like in Ephesians for far above all in the heavenlies, heavenly places. That's the same word. So if that's during the Acts period and that's where they're looking, and it's the same word, what's the difference? No, that's not. So then immediately red flags went up, and I was like, wow, this is dispensationalism. There's something not right here, man. So then the Hebrew roots got me. It was like a fish, man. It hooked me, and off I went.
Oh yeah.
So then I went down that road, and I grew a lot there, I think, because there's a lot of truth there. When you're coming out of like Roman Christianity or just, Western Christianity, and you realize that, wait a minute, there's something to this Hebrew. The first century guys were Hebrews, there's something to that. Once you realize that, I think there's a time when you go through that year where you're just like frantically trying to figure out, oh my God, half this stuff I learned was not true, and they're lies. And, and then you're trying to figure out what's even true anymore. But then it turns into just like everything else, man. It turns into aggression, divisions. We're the only one with truth. Nobody else does. If you call the Father Yahweh, you're wrong because it's really Yahweh. Or if it's not Yeshua, it's Yahshua. It's just like, dude, are you serious? But it just turned into the Baptists and the Catholics and just every other church experience that I'd ever been a part of. Again, it was just another version of it, So so that's when I walked away from all of it. I just said, I'm done, man. And so I just started doing my own studies, and I ended up on YouTube, and I was just kind of looking for something, and I found it was one of Jackson's videos. I don't remember which even one it was when it first got me started. And so I filled out the Yahad thing, and he sent me stuff, and ever since then I'm like, okay, here we go. Because what we have here is you don't have to invent things. We can just read the documents that we have and just, there it is. Read the Didache. You know, you can tell historically, we can prove historically exactly where we came from, what we believed, and what we believe today. You know, to me, it was like a breath of fresh air, because instead of sifting through 2,000 years of, you know, just mishmash, and you know, I mean, we all know how we got to where we are today. We all know how we got there. So, but when you first realize that a lot of that, a good chunk of that kind of stuff, we should have never even been a part of, that's a huge burden. That's like, I felt, wow, man, I was kind of slighted, like I was disrespected. I wanted to beat someone up, you know. I'm like, dude, I've been street preaching and knocking on doors, and you know, I think Yah was able just to share just the simple gospel of salvation, which I really believe is, you know, a legitimate thing to do, especially when you have a burden for souls. I really believe that, but the gospel I share with people today isn't the same as it was then. I can tell you that. There's a lot more to it today, you know. But yes, that's kind of where I came. And then this last 8 months, like I told you, I'm involved with the motorcycle club, and with me, it's a lifestyle, because I miss my Army brotherhood. But my Army brotherhood, a lot of those guys live within 3 or 4 hours from me, but a lot of those guys are not. I can't hang with those guys anymore. They're the same guys they were then. A lot of them are, most of them aren't real violent anymore, but a lot of them, they drink, and they say wicked things, and they don't care about the things of Yah, you know. I'm called away from that, you know. I'm just called away from that. But one of the things I wanted to tell you was that I was really burdened about Paul last spring, to the point where I was losing sleep, and I just could not get it settled in my mind what I thought about Paul, because it mattered so much to me. Because, you know, I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know, what would the Yahad do if Paul just magically disappeared? All of his epistles, all of his teachings, it's just like Yah just made him like he never existed. What would really change about us? And I can't think of anything that would really change. I mean, I do think there are things that Paul brings to the table that we don't have clearly anywhere else, you know. But so anyway, so that got me questioning things. So I ordered some books, you know, Questioning Paul by the dude that Steve or Craig, when they did the Yada Yada, he wrote a book called Questioning Paul. I disagree with a lot of his doctrines, but as far as documentation and research, and the dude's pretty meticulous. So I read his book, you know, I read Justin's paper, and just all different stuff I was going over, you know. And so I basically flooded myself with information. I watched the videos from Yahad on Paul. Yeah. And I said, yeah, to what Jackson said there. One of the biggest things that helped me was when I got the Authentic Letters of Paul, that book, and I read it. And that really helped me. There's still a couple of things with Paul I struggle with. You know, there's the question of circumcision, you know, and I know that, you know, circumcision of the heart and all that. But to me, the bigger one is the food sacrifice to idols, man, because even in his authentic letters and his letters of Galatians, he's still pretty clear about how he feels about keeping Torah, but he is boldly clear about the sacrifice to eating food sacrificed to idols. And to me, man, you just can't. How could you say that, man? I mean, circumcision I can get, because it's illegal. He wants the gospel to go forth. I get it, man. I get it, because then, and like I said, if someone really was redeemed and felt that they really wanted to become fully circumcised, and if that was really from Yah, then I'm sure they would have done it, behind the scenes or however they would have had to do it. But, if someone was really felt that they were called to do that, then do what you got to do, but so I get that. I guess not forgive him, but I can understand that, because I can't think of another way he could have taken the gospel into the places he did, preaching circumcision, because he wouldn't have been able to, so.
Definitely not one of the first topics you want to stress to people coming into
Absolutely.
coming into Torah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so the apostolic constitutions, the Nazarene Acts, and
it was one of the great big debates in Acts 2 of the congregation too. Like, it
absolutely. And it's legitimate. It's a legitimate thing, but then
have you noticed seems like there's like a modern movement of people trying to like stop it just for like the sake of doing it in hospitals and stuff, which I kind of like. If they're not doing it for the covenant, then I guess I wouldn't blame them for like questioning it. The way if I wasn't keeping the covenant, I would definitely question it. Why would
Stop
I be
doing what?
Practice circumcision.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, there's been like I've seen it online. Like there's people trying to just bring up a bunch of negative points about, or try and make points that's not necessary. But like I agree to a degree with them, because if they're not doing what we're trying to do and keep a covenant, why would you do something like that? Unless, but a lot of times it's because it's a tradition, that they got from their parents and grandparents.
It was illegal in Europe.
And I think that's a huge factor that people don't realize, that is a great reason why Paul would put that in his letters. It was illegal, and with a huge consequence, right? Wasn't it under the penalty of death?
A huge consequence is right if you got caught doing it, and you would probably get caught doing that. That and the food ordinances, two things and the women issue. You couldn't go into Europe and with those 3 points of view, but we find that this meat sacrifice to idols, there's a contradiction in, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 10. And there are 2 places he talks about that in there, within just a few paragraphs, and they're totally contradictory. Then we find out that one of those is not supposed to be in there. And the same with the women thing. Some of the stuff he says pejorative of women, it's not supposed to be in there. We learn that from the authentic letters of Paul. Everybody should at least know the contents of that book. Thanks for bringing it up.
You're welcome. Yeah. It's been a huge help to me. I don't have a Bible anymore. I have 3. I bring the.
Can you show us?
Yeah, well,
you have it on hand. I thought that was awesome. The photo you shared with us the other day.
Yeah, that's my New Testament. This is one. If I just have to grab one Bible, like one of the brothers from the club, whatever, invite me to church or something, I would take. This is the one I would take, just because it's the only one in English I could find that has the Septuagint. It's really not this. It's kind of a weird hybrid Septuagint, but it's better, in my opinion, than the Masoretic. And then I have the other Septuagint. It's upstairs. But it's basically like this one. It's the scholar's version, the new English translation of it or something. Yeah, and the authentic letters of Paul, and then I have our copy of the Nazarene Acts for the Didache, and even though it's in the back of that one, I like Jackson's version better, just because I'm trying to at least bone up on some of the Hebrew terms. My brother will stop yelling at me all the time when I call him. So
getting one of Brother Jackson's books will help you with that. I've been going through his book of Enoch.
Yeah,
and
the Sky Tripper. Yeah,
I've been writing in the margins. and not using highlighters, and all that. And it's great because I'm finding, it's, several, like on chapter 17, and it's sticking more, some of the words.
Mhm.
So that's definitely one of the benefits of doing that.
Yeah. One of the things that we had, well, anyway, I'll just finish my story real quick. But I was going through, so that was causing me some grief. But the club, we had some issues with my club. My club is I don't know how familiar you are with motorcycle clubs, but with me, it's a lifestyle. It's not like a riding club or like a Legion Riders, or it's a lifestyle. Like I wear biker clothes almost all the time. The people I hang with are legit bikers, like, people that are serious. It's kind of our, like we have a brotherhood. My wife is close with all the wives. And we had some issues this summer that some of the guys had with, and I'm actually the treasurer of the club, so I'm part of the officer corps. There was just a lot of stuff going on. It just was very, I won't share it all here, but it was very time consuming. Then at the end of the summer, one of my closest friends, one of my club brothers, actually, he was coming back from, he worked at a Harley shop about 25 miles from his house. And he was riding home from work, and my wife and I had just bought some land out there in where he lives. And a deer had actually came off of my land, ironically, and jumped out in front of him and killed him instantly, hit it, and broke his neck, and took him off the back of the bike and slammed his head on the ground. And it just,
man, I'm sorry to hear that.
It was rough. So his wife is obviously close with my wife and stuff, and it's a good lady, so we're still looking after her. But yeah, so that was a really rough one. We all went out there, and I took it hard. I cried a lot, and I'm sure some of the guys were like, man, he's, what's he? I was shedding tears. The reason why I was shedding tears was because based on the testimony of his life and of his own lips, he was not, I can't say that. I learned not to say that. Based on the fruit that I saw from his life, he did not have a relationship with the Father or the Son. I wasn't really interested in either one of them. So that's kind of why that's when my heart was breaking. Yeah, that's when my heart is breaking, because, he was and I don't know, because I don't judge his heart. That's the Father's and Son's going to do that, not me. But he does tell us that we know people by their fruit, and so anyway, it was a tragic thing. So his wife is still very involved with our club. We're a family, so she's one of our sisters, but beyond that, I have an obligation, to my father, because she's a widow, and so
that's right.
And so we care for her.
You'll see him and fellowship with him in the millennium, in the resurrection. And who's to say how far the Father's mercy extends? If you need him, you'll probably have him.
I hope so. Thank you for that, brother. I appreciate that. I hope so.
It's all in the Father's hands, and he's the righteous and most true judge, so there's no better hands for us to be in.
Amen.
He's merciful.
So during the summer, one of he's actually my best friend now. He's a man. His name is Brian. His club name is Schwabi. We call him Schwabi because his last name is Schwabenbauer. He's a retired cop, and not a beat cop though. He was a special ops guy. Go get the bad guy, get into that house, kind of, breach the doorway kind of guy. He's off. He's like me. Mine doesn't work quite like it should anymore. He has his issues, man. Goes to counseling. Him and I both we see separate counselors, but we do our thing, But this man, when I first met him, I felt a connection to him, but it wasn't just a friendly connection. It was he stirred my spirit, and so as I got to know him, because he started a prospect in our club, and part of the prospecting, the process is you have to get to know all the full patch brothers, and introduce yourself and get to know them a little bit, so that we can kind of feel you out and see if it's somebody we want to let you in our family, so to speak, and him and I just connected. And come to find out, his mom, who he loves very much, lives up the street from him, he cares for. His dad passed away, but him and his dad was very close. Wonderful man, but devout Catholic growing up, super spiritual, definitely has a relationship with the Father. He started asking me some questions. I don't remember if it was because the club is funny. My club brothers are funny, and I love them. And because we're big with respect. You don't be disrespectful to people. We're good people in the community. I mean, I would be anyway. But our club in general, they're good men. We support local businesses. We don't let bad things happen. We don't break the law. We don't do drugs or drink excessively or any of that kind of stuff. So, but he asked me, so I was praying one day, or maybe I said, sometimes they'll ask me to say a blessing for the meal or something, which I don't really like to do. I don't really like to publicly pray. And even though I don't think there's anything wrong with it, I just don't really care for it. And I really don't like to pray with and for people that I know, especially some of those guys I know mock God and things, mock the Father. And so I just really don't. So that I've politely told them, I'd really rather not do that anymore. It's really hard to do that, especially without making yourself look like you're trying to be quote unquote holier than thou.
Right.
But it is what it is. It was my conviction, so I just did it. But anyway, so he heard me use the name Yeshua. So he pulled me aside one day and said, "Hey, man, what's up with this Yeshua?" So that was like a door. So I started sharing,
Nice.
And he started absorbing. So then he's calling me and he's texting me at all hours of the night, and I'm sending him, Yahad videos, and and sending him, I send him the Didache, and he's reading it, and he's telling, brother, that is so awesome, dude. So I'm just like, wow. So he's asking me all these questions, and so now we've over the past probably 6 or 8 months, he's kind of been like a disciple. It's kind of been like a discipleship type thing. He understands that, listen, man, he loves the Torah. He's learning it. He absolutely loves it. He keeps Shabbat. He's learning about the feast. He's learning about, he's reading the Nazarene Acts.
Right.
He's been this is the man that I can, if I have a problem with any of my mental issues, he's the guy I call, and vice versa, because I can tell him things that I don't tell my wife. My wife doesn't know everything about my military service. She knows some things. Because I did a stint in Batavia for 9 weeks. We have a PTSD live-in facility up in Batavia.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a period of time when I was really not well mentally. I was suicidal and just not well. Like, I had to have interventions from my father-in-law and some friends and things. It was just not a good thing. So my wife and my VA psychiatrist kind of, I called it bullied me at the time, but it turned out to be from Yah, and it saved my life, because I ended up going into this living program for 9 weeks. I was only supposed to go for 3, but then while I was there, like by the end of the second week, I knew I had to extend, so I extended for 9 weeks and did trauma work and stuff there. And of course, I was, you know, I had a relationship with the Father. So I think at the time I was using the scriptures version or the Tree of Life version, maybe. But anyway, I ordered it and had it mailed there. And so to me, it was a very healing experience because, you know, it was all Yah based for me. You know what I mean? Like I leaned on him to help me through this. And although, you know, the counselors were helpful and my peers were helpful, ultimately it was my relationship with the Father that actually got my head back screwed on straight. And I was a change, and that's been it was instrumental in my life because I literally could have died any day. I mean, my kids were in school. I didn't care. As soon as they left, I started drinking. It was just a mess. It was just a mess, but yeah, it was good. And he brought me through it, you know. And so one of the things that, and I think that everybody's different. I think that we all have our areas that we are interested in, we have expertise in. And, you know, with me, one of the things that the Father has brought back to me is that, and I'm just speaking for me personally, but like I said in the beginning, man, I want my life to just exude the Torah. You know, I want to be able to not have to think about whether something should or should not do. I want to get to the point where my whole being is to the point where I just naturally do the things of the Torah. And if I don't do the things of the Torah, it's very uncomfortable for me. That's what I really pray hopes.
I can relate, brother. I think that's that point that he talks about where his Torah is written in our hearts, you know, and then it's like we want to do it, and it's not like a burden, but it's something that we actually desire to do. That's a beautiful thing, and I can appreciate that. I can relate, brother. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? It's so powerful. So I've been like I was talking with my wife today about Shabbat, you know, and so I was excited to go up to Watertown. One of my Army brothers, who Anthony was his name, he passed away from cancer a few weeks ago, and this guy is the opposite from my club brother. This is a man I've known for 35 years. He's a guy that the older he got, the farther along in life he got, the better he got. Like he would light up a room with his smile, deeply spiritual man, truly loved the Father, giving, just a blessing to be around. So his funeral was in Watertown. I lived down in Porterville, which is about, well, I'm on the PA New York border, so it's all the way upstate. So I got to drive the whole length of the state, north, south. So my other Army buddy, Murphy, he's one of my closest Army buddies. I was going to go to Elmira, which is about an hour and a half from me, pick him up, and then we were going to carpool up to Watertown. I'm excited because I've been trying to get Murph alone for a while because Murph is again raised Roman Catholic. He's Irish, so big, loud. He's like 6'5", just biggest mouth guy you ever meet, super loud, always telling stories, you know. But I'm thinking, so I'm praying for like the week before, I'm asking the Father, I'm like, Father, you know, I'm going to have him alone in the car for 5 hours, man. You know, give him ears to hear. And I'm praying, you know, please, I'm just fully confident that I'm going to be able to share some stuff with him. And I'm excited, right? And my other prayer to the Father was I wanted to be used somehow as a blessing to somebody up there, or just to anybody that maybe needed comfort, or in whatever way, just, you know, give me eyes to see, and then just show me what I need to do so I can do it, and just to be a help to somebody.
That's great.
So I go pick Murph up. We get in the car, MRSA talker. So the first 5 hours up there, I don't really get a word in edgewise. He's kind of monopolizing the show. So we get there, we go visit our friends. We go to the viewing. We go back to the hotel room. So I'm thinking, okay, here we go, man. And now I got my time, right? The only way I can describe it is it was a confirmation from the Ruach that I was not to share stuff with him. As much as I wanted to, and as much as I had a burden and prayed about it, was excited about it, I am absolutely convinced, still am, that I was not to share. I was not to share with him. And the first verse, of course, that came to mind was not to cast my pearls before
swine. Yeah.
And that broke my heart, man. I was weeping, and it still breaks my heart because I love this man. You know, I went to Desert Storm with this dude, man. Wonderful guy. No, I was not to do it.
How did the conversation go for that 5 hours? I mean, you just talked about regular stuff, and
he talked about old times, Army stories, chills. And this guy, you'd have to meet him. I mean, he will literally talk your ear physically off the side of your head, man. The dude, I love him to death. He's very entertaining, but if you have an agenda with this dude, you got to wait till he runs out of wind, man, and that could be a while. But yeah, but dude, I was so heartbroken, man. I was so heartbroken. So, but so what are you gonna do? So of course I prayed about it the remainder of the night and kind of thought, well, maybe the morning maybe it's just the end of a long day, and I just really kind of am tired and just don't want to deal with it. I don't know. So no, absolutely not. Confirmed again, just not to do it.
Wow.
So we go to the service, and we're going in the entranceway and we're looking at all the pictures of Anthony and all of us. We were kids and stuff, Army kids. And I see his sons there and my Army brothers and guys that I knew from so I'm looking for Anthony's wife because I know she's got to be the one person in this place. She's got to be hurting the most, right? So I see her up there, and and I'm walking towards her, and she's crying. She's like, "Hi, Shawn. It's so nice to see you." And she gives me a hug, and I go to lean back to say something to her. I got nothing to say. I was trying to provide a word of nothing. Drew a complete blank, nothing. So I just, I'm so sorry for it. Gave her the generic, I'm so sorry for your loss, He was a wonderful guy, and that's it, So I'm praying. I'm like, okay, Father, forgive me. I'm obviously, same thing. No, it was not to talk to her. I was not to share things with her. And so now I'm starting to get upset. So now I'm like, what is this me? Is there something I'm not getting here? Is this a sin, or you know what I mean? I'm starting to kind of, how could I not? This person has lost her husband, and he's, again, and to this day I feel confirmed in it. I was not to share with her, And so when it came time to speak, a couple of us guys went up and shared a testimony about him, And I did. I had a lot of wonderful things to say about the guy, But I could provide her no comfort, and not even saying goodbye. I just, hope you, really, it was, I felt kind of let down, but, in the days to come after it all, and praying about it again, I strongly feel that I did the right thing for whatever reason it was. Right? They didn't have ears to hear, They just didn't have the ears. And I couldn't help but think about you go into a house, you send your shalom. If it comes back to you, dust off your feet.
Right.
I was surprised because I'm thinking to myself, this person needs one, she needs comfort, man. No, not for me. But it wasn't to comfort me. So that's
It's
kind of kind
awesome.
of where I've
Awesome
been.
that you were sensitive to that though, you know, and in tune with the Ruach, because that's the first I think I've heard of that, but it makes sense, you know, that there's a time and a place for things, and the Heavenly Father, the Spirit, you know, moved you that, and that wasn't the time or place for it.
Well, you know, because after once I realized I wasn't going to say anything with her, I thought that maybe I should, you know, hey man, let me get your email or something in case you need anything, or let me give you my number in case you need anything. So didn't even feel really I didn't really feel I was supposed to do that either. It was just kind of that's it. Off you go. So off I went, man, and then went back, and the ride back with Murph back home. You know, I shared stuff from my own testimony, just because I can't talk for 5 hours with someone and not talk about the Father and the Messiah, you know, just
Right. I
because.
can relate to that.
But I had to be very wise with him. I couldn't. I really felt in my heart that I couldn't. Really, not my heart, my mind. It was just clear as day to me. I couldn't share with him like I was trying to share the gospel or share anything about to him. I had to do it as a testimony, from my own testimony, which I was happy to do anyway, because testimonies of people change lives. I believe
Yeah, you have a great
that,
testimony.
so, you know, so I shared what I could. But so I was, yeah, so I was kind of thinking what you guys thought about that. Has that ever happened? And I'm still, you know, I would like to say that it was me, you know, it was something me that, and so I should call Murph and, hey, brother, you know, I got some good news for you. But
Yeah.
I still, no, I
I don't blame
really,
you for having that doubt in the back of your head. What about you, Brother Jackson, Brother Greg, Brother Steve? Have any of you all had any of that ever happen to you before, or any members that you've fellowshipped with
I
had
mean,
a
like
similar experience?
becoming emotional.
No, it's like you like your mouth was like shut up in a way, like you had planned on sharing some great things about Yah and the kingdom, and then you just feel compelled, you know, not to.
Well, I'm usually compelled to, and I have done so in some instances that were certainly not welcome, but of course, but oftentimes what happens is, especially if it is a word from Yahweh, um, if you don't share it, you feel a strong burden of, well, I want to say guilt or shame, or, you know, Holy Spirit type shame, because you didn't speak in the name of Yahweh when you had the chance.
Yeah,
yeah, I never,
this is
to
like
this
an
day,
opposite situation.
yeah, I don't, you know, I just don't, I
Maybe
really,
it'll come. I
it
bet
was,
something will happen, and you'll realize something might happen. You know, might be a year from now, or who knows.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Miracles happen in this way. I've seen them several times where somebody that had a terrible time speaking in public finally made a decision. I'm going to do it no matter how it comes out. It usually come out good, but I'm hoping, because of Shawn's kind of vast experience here, like a lot of us, he's been through religion from Jesus to Paul, as John Lennon said. And he really does have something to share. So I'm hoping that pretty soon, especially with his experience here with the love and care of this Yahad family, that he will be able to step out again as he did at one time, and that when he does, he will have the confidence to know that he's a strong anointed witness for the Father that he knows so well.
my
Oh
prayer,
yeah.
I shared before that, my prayer is I would love to be able to heal. I would so love to be able to heal people. I told my wife, I said, what a testimony. I don't know how much time do I have? Well, I just real quick, brother, I wanted to share something, man, about, what do you guys think about, I was thinking, I was talking to my wife about this today. For 2,000 years, y'all used Rome to bring judgment on Israel and Jerusalem. And I can't help it. I believe that history is not linear. I believe it's cyclic, just like Yah tells us, there's nothing new under the sun, and from the beginning, and I believe in the restoration of the heavens and the earth, literally by fire remade. Father will be here with us, I believe in all that. And I can't help but wonder, is it a coincidence that, in 48, 49, 47, yes, Israel became a quote unquote nation again, but then we find the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls restore to us, how we're supposed to approach our Father, Yahweh, and how we're supposed to approach Yeshua, and who he really was, and how we're really to worship the Father, and all of that stuff is restored to us, and I can't help but think, it kind of made me chuckle today. I'm sitting here, I own like 12 or 15 different Bible versions, and you're thinking, which one is the best, which one, and I'm thinking, wow, man, 2,000 years ago, can you imagine if they could have, ordered from the local guy down the road, and he brings them they had access to the scriptures like we have,
right?
And all the different languages and all the different, and now we have now I can go online at that early Christian writings and early Jewish writings.com. I can literally click on any single first century writing in English and read it for absolutely nothing, or get it from the Yahad for absolutely nothing,
The blessing being the age of information.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, there's been its curses for sure, but yeah, blessing. But man, so I thought about that. This is I really think this is the Father restoring things back to what he said. And I'm thinking, I'm following over in Israel, and I know that they rebuilt all the temple instruments, and they did that sacrifice. When was that? Like a year ago or something? Whatever that on that lamb or something they brought up. And I wonder about that. And I thought, guys, anytime they built the temple and started sacrificing again, man, Yah brought judgment. He brought judgment. And if they do it again, is he going to bring judgment again? I think that the Great Tribulation happened. I think it's all done. I think that the time of troubles happened. I think Yeshua came back. And I think that he quote unquote raptured the elect, the ones that were martyrs, the overcomers, so to speak. And I think there's going to be another resurrection, and I think he's going to come back again, because I don't think he's kept all of his for sure promises yet. I believe he still has.
I'm with you. I'm with you
Yeah.
on all of that. Yes. And it seems like the day is drawing nigh, especially when we look at Barnabas, who gives us an exact date as to when
I wanted to talk
will be restored.
Yeah, actually, Jackson, it's funny you said that, because I watched one of your videos I watched either today or yesterday. Was you were talking about Barnabas in it, and you were talking about the 6,000 years, and I had a different thought on that. I think I agree with it. I agree with exactly what Barnabas says, but I think that I don't think the time began between day 4 and 5 in 1 or 2 BC. I think it began at his resurrection, because I think that that's when I just the death of the Son of God for the salvation of man, and his resurrection. That's the moment of time, I think, when we went from day 4 to day 5. And if that's true, and I'm just obviously just speculating out loud, but if you take AD, say 28 or 30 and add 2,000 years, that's AD 28 or AD 30. I'm not saying the Lord's coming back. I'm not saying Yeshua's
I
coming
like
back.
that idea because I might make it. I might be alive then.
I hope so.
I'm keeping
We all
my
do.
fingers crossed.
Well, if he does come back, it's my prayer that the Messiah comes back, and it is a secret rapture, and Israel doesn't have to go through that horrific time again, and all those millions of people.
Right.
That's just people that really want that are they should really take a minute and think about what they're asking for, and take some time and read the wars of the Jews and things, and maybe they wouldn't fight too much
Absolutely.
about that.
Man, you got it right on the head. If they would read the wars of the Jews, do they really want that kind? And with modern warfare, they want that kind of retribution to come down upon Israel in these days so that Messiah can come? Wow. I'm not against the idea of a rapture in our day, but back in that day, the rapture, I believe, did happen, and that it was secret. And, why isn't it written about if it happened? Well, because the ones that could write about it were gone. Nobody knew what happened to them. But that sounds like go ahead.
If there was a rapture, then why are we still here?
Why are we still here? Because this is our Father's time for us to be here. We're still supposed to be here.
I thought the rapture is what happens last.
No, not as far as, I'm sorry, Melissa, not as far as we read. It's really one of the earliest things to happen once we get into the millennium. But it seems like first thing that has to happen is that evil has to be defeated. And we see in our day right now, we see all kinds of evil coming out of every pore of the earth. Yeah.
I'm telling you.
You've got to have these things unmask themselves before anyone, even Yahweh, can do anything with it. And they're being unmasked now. So that's my hope anyway. Yeah, we teach a lot of different ways in our faith, but the one that I like the best is that what Shawn teaching now. That in maybe another 13 years, I'd be 82 years old if I could make it that far, that the time of evil being sucked up by the vacuum of good, and the translation of humans on earth, I mean, at least those that have been born again, according to John 5, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing if it could happen in our lifetimes?
Amen.
Because, when it happens, we're not done. We're just beginning the work, because we have a world to win here, but we just don't have the supernatural power that we would like to have right now. Like Shawn says, he'd like to heal. Me too. But I would say, we'd like to heal consistently. And at that time, when we're sent back into this world with these powers, we'll be able to, just like Yeshua did.
Amen.
I didn't mean to talk so long, but
brother,
I got excited when he said that.
Well, and I believe that because, we know what the teaching of true Israel. It doesn't have anything to do with bloodlines, So I would like to think that judgment at the time, was done, I don't know. I mean, I'm just wishful hoping. So I do believe I'm with Jackson. I don't necessarily believe, but I certainly have faith. And I'm gonna have faith in that, man, because you have to believe in something. And so it's like I was telling Schwabi, my buddy Schwabi, I said, you know what, brother, if we die and it turns out that none of this was true at all, and I said, you lived a good life, man. You lived a moral life. You were kind to people. So really,
Yeah.
it's it's a win-win. If there's nothing else, at least you lived a good life. If there is something else, don't you want to make sure, you know, that kind of deal, Baptist, don't you want to make sure you're on the right side of things, you know? But you know what I mean?
You've got no regrets then. Who knows what the other side is going to be like? And it's like, I don't know whether I believe or not, but I certainly have hope. I certainly have hope. I'm not one of these people that can be sold out in my life as far as belief, but that hope is that there is not only an afterlife, but that it follows the scriptural plan. And if it does, then we have a lot more to do. We have to be prepared to do it. We have to be prepared because we're going to go to school for a little bit in the resurrection, and we're going to be brought back here immediately as judges and as evangelists and as miracle workers and apostles, but not just with a human authority. We're going to have a supernatural authority. And remember, all evil, all devilish hindrances will be cast away. They won't be here anymore. If we didn't have that, we could probably be superhuman in our evangelism right now. But we still have that devil to deal with, and people that are not ready, people that are not prepared for dealing with the devil, they can't deal with them. Only we could be able to do that. So yes, I mean, I wish that I had enlisted in the Army back in 1970. I listened to a lot of audiobooks about the armed forces. I really liked to hear about it, but I couldn't get in because I had a physical defect that kept me out. But when this time comes, we're going to be combat ready because we've lived our lives 50, 60, 70, 80 years in this world where we have learned, specifically learned to combat every evil foe, and we're going to put him down. I'm ready to go to war. And that's what we're in now, but just the first stage of it. Let's get ready. We've got to be ready for that. Time's coming. I hope that everybody on here is raptured out at the appropriate time. And I hope that I make it to that time. But if not, look, we're still going to be together in the resurrection. We're going to be together. We're going to know each other, see each other. We're going to have all the tools we need. Even the tongue-tied, primitive Baptist little preacher is going to be able to speak with the tongue of a rhetorician in those days.
Amen.
Amen.
So my plan is I'm as soon as the weather breaks up here, I would like to take a road trip down to Vero Beach at whenever, Jackson. I don't know what your schedule is like and all that, but I don't really want to wait till next fall. I was kind of wondering like much sooner than that, because I really would like to be immersed and have hands laid on me. I really, really strongly want to have that done.
Maybe I'll just come up there.
Well, you love Buffalo, so bring
Yeah.
Buffalo.
You can go right through here. You're on your way. You go right through Ohio on your way.
Up until these last 2 years, I've taken road trips twice a year, 6 weeks at a time, and gone and visited Yahad friends and members all over the place. I just haven't been able to do it because of the COVID. And this year, I haven't been in good enough health to do that. But I'm looking for doing that again, setting up an itinerary to come around and see everybody. Like I said, I spent with Commander Lee at least 12 weeks out of every year on the road and staying with people, staying in tents, sleeping in the car if we had to. And we covered a vast amount of area, you know, on the east of the Mississippi, but we went everywhere, man. We've been everywhere, man. We've been everywhere. I don't have Commander Lee anymore either to drive. So maybe I can get a new bodyguard. He needs prayer. He needs prayer. If you remember Commander Lee, he's a mess. So maybe the Father will restore his health and we can get these road trips going again. I hope so.
Yes, that's pretty much my story, Brother Emerson. I mean, I don't really, like I said, I don't really share a lot of like my Army details with people. I don't really see much profit in that, other than the fact that I'm here talking to us today, to you today. So the Father got me through it in spite of myself. So
this is a great evangelism event, brother. Don't think it's not.
I'll tell you what. I tell you what, brother, it was in spite of myself. It was. I mean, there's been times that I've driven drunk probably 1,000 or 2,000 times. Never killed anybody, never killed myself. But you know, I do believe that the Father has a plan for all of us, you know, and I think he's going to sort it out because I have a lot of time. I'm retired. I have a lot of time. My kids are all teenagers and grown now, and that's why I was wondering about the like during the week if the rooms were ever open for just like general chat or whatever.
We need to make that happen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I see a lot of value in that because I don't think Shabbat and, you know, the occasional meetings enough, especially when we can actually like have some more interactions and get more like, you know, people that sometimes tend to be quiet. We can get them talking probably and learning from each other, sharing what we've been through.
I like.
I know you'll be there, Melissa.
Melissa loves to contribute.
Yeah. So Emerson, let's start working on that and get that going for next week.
That sounds great.
I'm here just about all the time, and I could open this up actually every day in the afternoon. We'll see what the other ones say about it. Here's the flyer.
I'd have to join you all in the evening.
Yeah.
If we were to do that because of my work schedule and the kids, it's easier for me when they're in bed.
Okay, let's set a couple of times and we'll announce it and we'll do it. And Shawn, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. In any way I'm available to help. I mean, I have a burden to pray. I pray a lot for people. Like I'm mindful of what people post on the messenger. I saw this stuff today and I just have a burden to pray for people just because I've done so much evil to people in my lifetime that I don't want to do that anymore. I want to pray.
Okay, you won't. And I thank you all for being here. Thank you, Am. You did a great job too. And we'll see you tomorrow morning.
I look forward to it.
Thank you, Brother Emerson, too.